A person had a very clear dream in which there was soil in terraces. It was all prepared as if it was ready for crops. It was a dark, soft, and clean soil. And in each terrace there were residents. But those residents had extremely rough dwellings. But on the right side of those terraces, coconut trees were very high, and between each coconut tree there were small plants emerging. Well, this dream shows the difference between the work of the kingdoms and the mineral work, that is the soil, ready for crops, and clean, totally prepared. And the human being contaminating and messing everything symbolized by that rough house. And on the right side of those terraces, the coconut trees symbolized points of attraction. So it's as if the plant kingdom was attracting a new situation, was that in that place working, just like the minerals were working, the soil which was prepared, clean and beautiful to be planted, and the coconut trees attracting a new situation, and the humankind making everything dirty. Between the coconut trees, small plants would arise. That means a new consciousness was emerging, a new possibility to treat everything, to be together with the kingdoms in a more harmonious way. And this dream made me remember that we have two lands in a stage of implantation, and these two lands, the lands of the sun and the lands of brotherhood, if we would take in mind this harmony among the kingdoms from the beginning as a priority in those places, the harmony of human beings with the kingdoms. And it's not by chance that in the lands of the sun and the lands of brotherhood for now, there are nothing else to do but deal with the soil, with the kingdoms, because life in these two areas of Figueira is not demanding so many tasks from us, because there's only a house with 2 or 3 people, so daily life, the day by day, doesn't demand much from people. It's not like other areas which are a true factory of tasks by their own structure, installations, and the movement that is a lot beyond the work of contact with the kingdoms. So in these two places, in the lands of the sun and the lands of brotherhood, we are still in that stage of everything is about the kingdoms, treating the kingdoms, the plants, the animals, everything that represents the kingdoms. So this dream, with those coconut trees attracting those new plants, it's as if it was a sign for us that in the lands of the sun and the lands of the brotherhood, simplicity of life should be preserved, so that the day by day may not be complicated, so that daily life may be as it is in the beginning and things are not implanted. This should be very preserved. Those coconut trees, it means an attunement with something higher. So may in these two places, after the experience of the other areas, may we complicate as less as possible, Let us do everything in such a simple way that we won't spend the whole day doing things for ourselves. You know what this is, right? Spending your whole day doing things for ourselves. And true work is there waiting. So the simplicity of life, for everything to be so simple, that we may be really in charge of that which is very important at that moment, according to this dream. Because according to this dream, the soil is ready, the soil is clean, is soft, and that which is on top is rough, so that we may see that we have a possibility and we have an opportunity for creating something different. So from the beginning, we should have more contact with the kingdoms, as it is a rural area, than the things of the day that are useless and that would be much more evolutionary if they were very simple. So this is like a challenge for us. But in this line of having everything very simplified, we also have a care to unite ourselves and collaborate, not only with the soil as a mineral kingdom, or just with the plants as the plant kingdom, but to collaborate as well with that which is called the sixth hierarchy. The sixth hierarchy, which is the spirits of nature, the devas, the elemental beings. So if an area begins with this included in its consciousness, if those vital forces of nature are included, those areas will have a completely different development. And the answer of those kingdoms, of those crops, of that agriculture, could be a model for us, so that we may further on adjust all of agriculture, the life of other areas, to this same level of collaboration. So it's as if the soil was ready, prepared, the soil was already there so that this could happen, but not that there is not a complete work with the soil and plants without the presence of that hierarchy, without the presence of those natural forces, those vital forces, those spirits of nature that take care of the evolution and the development of plants and the earth. So it seemed to me that in this opportunity, in the face of the vision of this person, that we should concentrate on this matter, because humankind contaminated the planet so much, disorganized the surface of the planet so much, that certain things today cannot even be transmuted by the devas and elemental beings present in the etheric and astral plane of the surface of the earth. Because the terrible state in which humankind led the planet from the point of view of balance, it was necessary that laboratory vessels would approach the earth, and today there are thousands of those vessels around the earth making this work of transmutation. A great part of devas, a great part of the spirits of nature, distanced to other works and levels, and they are not working in the same proportion that they used to work, for example, 30 or 40 or 50 years ago. Today, the works of those spirits of nature the work of those devas or angels that take care of plants and the earth, that work was reduced and was handed to the work of the laboratory vessels, because the strength that needed to be applied is higher. So the work that the devas and elemental beings and angels did, a part of that work, which is much more material than they have conditions to do, is done by those vessels. But those spirits of nature, those devas, those angels or natural forces, still count on forces that are manifested regardless of the obstacles. Not all elemental beings are distanced. There is a part that is in charge of working regardless of obstacles. Because if they stop working, plants won't have vital strength anymore, and the plant kingdom won't be able to manifest itself with more delicate species, as those eatable plants, flowers, and other delicate species of the plant kingdom. So this work of union with these kingdoms, this work of openness for these presences is very important, because today practically no one takes care about this. When agriculture is done today, or when there's some agri work, we think about machines, we think about fertilizers, we think about tractors, we think about everything in calculations, but we don't think about what is most important, which is the collaboration with these spirits, with these vital forces of nature, these beings, and they are the ones responsible. They are part of the life of plants. So that we can understand this topic a little, and so that we can be very close to this collaboration, or opening up for this collaboration which is so necessary, we could rapidly see what the process of growing of a plant, the one that when plants and humankind start working, the main thing is done, which is the one of bringing it to these planes, the idea of the plant that should grow. There can't be a seed or a sapling or a seedling if the idea of that plant is not brought from the height. No plants will sprout anywhere if the idea for that plant doesn't come down from the plans of creation and doesn't reach the material plane. So for a seed to exist, the idea of that seed, the idea of creation for that seed, that idea needs to come down seed by seed. A seed cannot exist if the idea of God for it does not come down for it to exist. And those who bring that idea from the height, from the plane of ideas to material planes, are these beings, these devas, these angels, these forces of nature. So when we have a seed in our hands, it seems like it will begin there. That seed wouldn't be in your hands if those forces of nature hadn't brought their idea here. They wouldn't exist, they wouldn't have the center of life, and this was brought here so that it could materialize through that sixth hierarchy, as we call in that book, The Gardeners of Space, that you know. So a part of that sixth hierarchy which is behind everything that happens to the soil and to plants, brings the idea. And as this idea approaches the earth, the materialization, other hosts are around there, protecting that idea so that idea is not dissolved. So with all that presence, that idea takes form and is projected more and more downwards. And then a pattern emerges, the essence of a seed, which has condition to become a plant, to develop its life. So that is protected, that is kept in those planes by hosts of the sixth plane, by those spirits, those vital forces of nature. And then other hosts enter to create the form of that idea. So each seed that you touch, that was a creative work of several forces and beings, of several elemental beings, of angels, of devas, of natural forces. There was a work there, creating the shape of that seed, creating the shape of that which should be manifested. And those beings and forces, those elemental beings, those angels and devas, they maintain that existent form until this reaches humans' hands, until humans may receive it or start working. Anyway, the work is done. The work is all done when it reaches human hands. The plant has already its potential of what it must be. So that's when things start to work and limit that which was brought, which was developed and was preserved as an idea, as a pattern, as a symbol for that which should be. How can we do to manage this, collaborating with this process, when that is brought in, we hold it, when it enters our field of work? How can we do to degrade as less as possible what was done? How can we treat all that material in the best way possible that will be transformed into materialized plants, grown plants? We cannot deal with that correctly if we don't have the least intuition. And it is through this intuitive world, our possibility of being intuitive, that we innerly will receive from this Devic kingdom, these elemental beings, the teaching of how we can have a correct action with what we're dealing with. The correct action is not learnt in books. The correct action is only learned through experience, because books and experience already done is about a mineral kingdom and a plant kingdom that was studied and researched and well known. This intuition that comes from these forces of nature for us, which comes from devas and angels and all the sixth hierarchy, that intuition teaches us the immediate treat and new treat, because those seeds and those plants, this plant kingdom, is rehearsing to be a new kingdom. So the plants that are coming down now, crop now, the plant kingdom now is rehearsing to be a different plant kingdom, a future plant kingdom. So we cannot treat a plant today just with the knowledge from books, only with our traditional knowledge of traditional agriculture. This plant kingdom is changing. This plant kingdom is in transformation. This plant kingdom is approaching that which is the intraterrestrial plant kingdom today. So we need intuition to work with this. So there are two ways of working with crops. There are two ways of making these lands develop. There is a traditional and known way, which is using all the methods which are known for planting, for cropping. We all know that. But beyond that, today, the one who serves the plant kingdom, the one who serves the earth, needs intuition. Because if they don't have intuition, they will work with the plant and they will suffocate what is there, causing pressure to be renewed, which is in the evolutionary line of that plant, which is there, having a process of exteriorization. So it's not enough for us to know how to plant, we should know this, but every time that we approach this work, every plant and seed that we relate with, each crop that we do, we need to have must have intuition present, because that could be a new process beginning, and we will be collaborating with that sixth hierarchy, that whole kingdom, not only when we produce things to harvest, but especially when we are collaborating in the development of that species, of that seed, of that plant. Anyway, of the example of that kingdom that is in our care. So we should be very open to intuition, because only intuition can bring you new data if something new is happening to a plant, if that plant is in a new process already. And this is very important, because working with that plant, you can stimulate the essences of that plant, or you can suffocate it. Today I heard something that certain essences are very important for the humankind of surface, the material essences. Imagine if in those essences the force is still alive, the force that moved the plant. If that essence remains, the force that was in the beginning of the plant, that force which was developed and brought by the sixth hierarchy, if all of that is included in our work, you can imagine the richness, the wealth of this whole process. And the lens of the sun and the lens of the brotherhood, there is the energy, the environment, the possibility for this to be done strictly, because those lands emerged, and we'll deal with crops with a different consciousness there. It's not the same consciousness from 15 years ago. This should be a different consciousness, the consciousness of really collaborate with those forces and kingdoms. So to cultivate the soil and plants for us must have a higher meaning, a new meaning, because cultivating a plant should not only it growing, cultivating, harvested and eaten. In this whole process there is the plant's process, the evolutionary process of that plant being, of that seed, of that fruit. Each plant that emerges is not like any other. Each orange tree that you plant is not like the other one. And depending on the relationship that you have with it, depending on the relationship that you have with that kingdom, that is much more than obtaining oranges for consumption. It's the whole process of that plant, the whole process of that fruit, which could be always more evolved in contact with us. It has been said a little earlier that the angels and elemental beings and the spirits of nature that take care of this are having the necessary work so that this kingdom does not perish, but those kingdoms in the sixth hierarchy is very attentive to our reactions and is very attentive especially to our intentions. So depending on our intention and consciousness when we work with this, the development of that plant will depend on it. A carrot or a fruit tree could have a material development indeed, and could produce fruits abundantly. But does the whole development of the plant happen in this whole process? Couldn't that fruit be more? Couldn't that carrot be more what? We will feel this and notice this as we relate to this. For instance, if we do this with intuition, connected with those realities, I don't know if we will plant things with the distance that we use from one plant to the other, and I don't know if the distance between a plant and the other is only the one in the books and in teachings. You should know at that moment, beginning from the distance between one plant and the other that you planted. So what you see today, everything with the same distance, this is lack of intuition, lack of contact with these things. Because if there was a seed, if there is the seedling of a plant that has more possibility of development than others, so they will need more space than a normal plant. Not all plants have the same qualities. It's just like human beings. So if a seed has a special quality, that seed, the plant kingdom will have some experience in that plant, and it could be that the plant that comes from that seed needs some special space for that experience to be done. So I can plant a lot, but I need to know the distance that I will plant those things. And there are no books to explain this, there are no minds to say that. We need intuition here, we need perception here. We need a quality that emerges within us and is developed within us when we dedicate to this. Otherwise, it won't develop. I don't know, for instance, if I could know the distance between the plants that I plant, I will only know this when I'm doing it. And depending on the way that I'm doing it, because if I'm doing that in a brutal way, if I do it only materially, I will suddenly not notice anything. But if I'm doing that with a different spirit, with a different attunement, then I will find out that I can perceive things. I can know these things. But the sixth hierarchy, those angels, those devas and elemental beings, those forces of nature, they don't give us anything if we're not in a living work of collaboration with them, because they have a sense of silence. They have such a union with the divine that they protect the things that they represent. So you will only receive these intuitions, or better, you will only collaborate with this hierarchy, those kingdoms, and have a work with them. You will only have this learning experience and develop these things and perceive these things only in practice, only in its realization, and if it is together with them. You see, so this is why agriculture is in this situation today. Agriculture today is poisons everywhere, a collection of poisons that you know. So the knowledge to deal with this and the way of bringing this to manifestation in an orderly, harmonious way, collaborating with divine evolution, the way of doing this, the intuition to do this, comes from this hierarchy that takes care of these plants. But it's in the work and contact, and depending on how you are there, that this intuition is transmitted. It's not that, it's because for you to attune with these forces, you need to be very attuned with it. You need to be in an attitude of great respect, of great fraternity with them, in a special attunement. You're not always dealing with totally spiritual material. You're dealing with etheric, dense matter because the sixth hierarchy brought this to the physical plane, and you're dealing with physical and astral material. And this is extremely sensitive to your action, to your union with that and the balance that you have there. So you will really know what to do with a plant and know how to have a crop when you are really fully integrated there and very united, very connected to that hierarchy. Otherwise, you do what everyone does, and you will do what everyone and you'll harvest what everyone harvests, depending on the circumstances. But the evolutionary work, that is, you were noticing and giving opportunity to a plant to develop something in that process, to evolve during that process. This is the work with crops. This is the spirit of the work with plants. So, of course, that it's not everyone that will be part of the crops, the plantations, because you would need vocation for these things. You need comprehension of this process, and put this intention and put it into practice. Something that in this field of crops does not only take place between us and plants, between us and the lands. For this to really constitute an evolutionary process as it should be developed in the lands of the sun and the lands of brotherhood, it's necessary that beyond us, plants and the land, the sixth hierarchy is necessary. These forces of nature are necessary, these angels are necessary, these elemental beings are necessary, that work without us knowing of their existence, because no plants grow without them being there. But we're so distant from these things, we're so ignorant of all this, that things grow naturally, and we, without participating a little more, giving of us more, and collaborating more for this development. Because even if you wanted, you will never reach the intuition of a deva, the intuition of an angel, about the process of that plant, the process of that soil. So here we really need the being that will work in the crops. They will come, and then all the rest comes. They come with this comprehension, with this vocation, to be in contact with this and to develop an evolutionary crop and not just productive. So you see, in the lands of the sun, in the lands of brotherhood, as they don't have anything else to do but to take care of this, because the only activity there now is this. These are the two groups and lands that with time and placing the plantations of all the rest of Figueira taken to a new level, but this needs to happen somewhere. This level should be recognized and experienced. This level should be materialized in some area. And we are distracted with many other things. We're busy with many other things. And really, plants end up growing just by the action of the sixth hierarchy than ours. Because you see that we use some minutes a day just to water it or weed it out. And the hierarchy is there 24/7, so the work of the hierarchy is constant and eternal, and ours is intermittent. So in our in this lack of we should to really be part in this evolutionary current, not just in the time that we're taking care of it, we interrupt something that the hierarchy is doing there, and the whole kingdom is building there. In this center, in this group, there is a base for these things. There is a consciousness formed in certain things, and this is why the lands of the Sun and the lands of the Brotherhood arrived 15 years later, awaiting our consciousness to be in a different level. So there are not habits, addictions, or implanted ways there, but without intuition, this is all very material. This is all very productive, but what about the rest? What about the main thing, which is development, evolution? And then, if we use a fruit which was grown and developed this way, this will have a work of subtlety within us much greater than if we didn't do that work. That would be practically mental of interest for it to be a fruit for you, so that you can later on use it. We need more than this, which is for this contact with this kingdom. The fruit, when it comes to be part of your body, when you ingest it, it's a different process. That fruit will have a different value. That fruit will be connected to your inner planes, your subtle planes, and this is for herbs, seeds, everything. We have a work with medicinal herbs, with seeds, with agriculture as a whole. We have all the stages available to have an evolutionary work in a general way. But the goal for this lecture, for this sharing, because of that dream that so we need to see that, because we're not here to make a mess, we're here to be the coconut trees, so that the new plants can grow. And those new plants, everything the plants include, when you treat them in the spiritual way or in an evolutionary way, it's not that these things have been absent from crops yet all these years. They were present, but now we should have this as a priority for these lands, for these areas. So those who are in those areas, be careful not to fill your days with useless things, things that can be done in just a few minutes, and it take hours, because they're transformed into real white elephants in the field of tasks. So we need alignment with these things, so that we can have the capacity and possibility of simplifying life, of simplifying activities, of simplifying our personality. We need to be simpler, we need to be more direct, purer in this sense. This is the invitation that vision brought us. And I think that we have all the conditions here for this to take place. And if this all came up, if this was all shown, it's because this is all there to collaborate with us. And we thus need to recognize the kind of collaboration that could emerge, the kind of work that can emerge. This is why it's called the lens of the sun, because the sun is the ruler of the system, and this regent is also helping. And the lens of brotherhood, because this fraternity, this union, this brotherhood needs to be extended beyond this human relationship, because human relationship without these other relationships, it's very complicated. So you spend most of the day taking care of your human relationships, when it should be something imperceptible. It should be something that would flow, because the important thing is not this. You're not in the world to be in relationships. You're not in life to have human relationships. Human relationships is the consequence of you being in life with others. It's just a consequence. So in these lands of the sun and in the lands of brotherhood, these groups must keep this in mind, because they won't allow other things to approach and erase these things and take all their time with things that are not this. If you are before a fruit tree, you're not in the face of a fruit factory. You're before a plant being. That is a plant being. That is a member of a plant species. You're before that. And from that relationship, that recognition, you will receive that force, but you're in the face of a living being, a kingdom which was the one which fulfilled its role the most, which fulfilled its task the most, because the plant kingdom fulfilled its task, its plan more than the human kingdom. So we are before a pattern kingdom for us. So a whole knowledge and a whole way of treating comes from it. These things are done with the heart, not with gestures, with the mind or attitudes. This is done through the heart, and it's through the heart that you will get to these things.